Lethal Company. The best and absolute most funny game in the entire world right now. Its retro graphics make it one of the most unique games to play, but I was wondering, what if I made those graphics a little more realistic? So in today's video, that's exactly what I'm gonna be doing. The Hoarding Bug. This little guy has become one of the biggest memes in all of the game. They like to steal your loot, and if you try to get that loot back, well, you might as well consider yourself dead already. The first thing I did was use this alligator belly as the belly for the bug. Using the pen tool, I cut out a shape for his little skinny arms. I then drew a crap ton of little spikes on him. I started drawing out a shape for his head, and I'm not gonna lie, this looks like crap. I started putting on this texture, but you guys gotta stay with me. I promise it does look good in the end. I started adding some basic shadows, but I will say the shadows did give it a little bit of shape. I duplicated the arm and flipped it on the other side. I put in this beetle's back just as like the outside of the shell. I then drew in the legs the exact same way that I did with the arms, as well as adding those little spiky bits on them. I masked out a shape for the antennas, and this looked alright. I then put in this texture for the legs and warped it a little bit just to make it match its shape. After that, I made it match that same green color that the original bug was. I did some shadowing on both legs and then decided to do the exact same thing for the arms. Shadowing is the only thing that actually makes this stuff look realistic. I added some shadows to the antennas as well, and just under the legs. Using the lasso tool, I drew out a shape for his mouth, and that looked funny. Then I drew in some little shapes for his teeth, as well as two big red circles for his eyeballs. I then added a little dot in for the pupils, and started adding some shadows on the eyeballs and underneath them. This made the eyeballs look significantly better. I added a very faint texture to the antennas. I then started drawing in these little spiky thingies. I don't even know what they're supposed to be. I then painted on this very faint yellow texture just to make it a little more cohesive. I also cut out these little bits in his arms to make it look more like an insect and not just this weird creature. Now we're gonna give him a little baby screw, just like it, steals the things in the game, I darkened that thing up a bunch and then cut off the end to make it look more like the screw in the game. I drew in even more spikes just to make the skin look a little less smooth. I did the exact same thing with the antennas, then added a nice brick wall to the background, made it a little bit darker, and did the same thing with the floor. Using a soft round brush, I painted in some shadows just to make it look like the bug was still standing there instead of just floating. I cut off some parts of the shell to make it match the perspective of what I had going around. I painted in two different light sources, one on the left and one on the right. Don't worry though, I am going to change the colors because the colors I chose at the beginning are not nice. I decided on the color being orange for the highlights, so I started those. I started just by doing a basic highlight everywhere. I then took years to do this rim light around the whole thing. Goodness, this took forever. This is all sped up, but it was probably a good 30 minutes of just straight doing these highlights. And this is a good time for me to tell you guys that I did put memberships on my channel. You can buy them for $5 a month. It will give you access to videos early, as well as some free badges and emojis. So if you guys want to support me in other ways, that's a good way to do it. After the highlights were finished, I added a nice subtle glow to the background just to make it look like the lights were bouncing off of the bug. This little bloom really does make a huge difference. After that, I decided to go ahead and start adding a camera raw filter. I messed with all the sliders, turned up every one and turned down some, and this is what we've got. I actually like this one quite a lot. I like how the background looks. I didn't really mean for it to look like fire, but you know what? It did, and I like it. So tell me what you guys think in the comments, and let's move on to the next one. The Forest Keeper. This guy has immaculate eyesight and will attack you at any moment if he sees any motion at all. Once this guy sees you, you're done. No, I'm dead. To start this bad boy out, I just started tracing out all of his body. Oh, that sounded weird. I filled in each layer with a nice brown color and then put in this picture of a tree. I made that wood the same color as it is in the game and then used that same picture of wood to fill up the rest of his body. I found this picture that suspiciously looked like eyes, so I put that right on there. I faded out the edges with the layer mask just to make it blend into the body more and added some textures for the arms. Using the pen tool, I drew in the shape for his mouth and filled it with a very dark brown. I then used this picture of a hole in a tree trunk and used it for the rest of the holes on his body. To do that, I just faded the edges out. Gosh, this is so dang repetitive. I duplicated that thing and moved it wherever I needed to. I then started adding a bunch of shadows just to add some shape. This unsurprisingly helped a lot. Shadowing to his little feet actually made it look like he had toes. Then of course I had to add some blood. I put the blend mode on multiply, then masked out the parts that I did not need. I really like how the blood on this eye looked. It looks really creepy. I also drew in some really faint red spots just where the blood is. Then I painted on some moss. I didn't know how this was gonna look, but I liked how it ended. I decided it was time for a background, so I dragged in this forest and I softly painted in this other regular forest for the foreground. I darkened everything up quite a bit to make it look like it was night, and then added a nice bright light source in the back. I added some nice highlights to the ground, as well as some really faint ones to the back trees, adding even more shadows to make the forest keeper match the background. I painted in some shadows on the ground as well to make it look like the forest keeper was actually standing there. Once again, I added some very basic highlights all around the forest keeper, and added a really bright rim light just to the outside, which took forever. I went around all the edges with the flow of my brush being at 100%. If you guys would like to support my channel, I'd be really appreciative if you guys could subscribe as well as like the video. It helps share my videos to others, and I thank you guys a lot for all the support I've been getting recently. I once again added a very subtle glow just to the outside, and that looked awesome. I even added a nice little flare to make it look like the light was shining through, and I really liked how that looked. I added a subtle blur to the background and started adding a camera raw filter, and this is what we have as our final product. This one was actually one of my favorites to make. I just really enjoyed it for some reason. I like making big monsters and using some random pictures to make it. So yeah, tell me how you guys like it in the comment section below, and let's move on to the next one. The Nutcracker. This guy likes to go around and he has a shotgun. So if he finds you, he will kill you in one shot. Since I don't want this episode to be too long, I'm gonna play this out as a speed edit so you guys can watch my whole process, and I hope you guys enjoy. This is the final product. I hope you guys like it. It definitely has a different vibe than all the other ones, but I'm kind of here for it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I really appreciate you guys with all the support you've been giving me recently. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.